Let's wait for another minute and start our session. Okay, it's 12:30. Let's begin. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. Thank you for taking your time to join this session, where we will be discussing the good practices in STEM education. My name is Gohar Tadevosyan. I'm a senior social development specialist from East Asia Department, ADB. Before we start, please be reminded to mute your microphone and turn off your video to minimize the background noise. So with that, let's go over the agenda of this session. The session will consist of 3 parts. The first part of the session shares some best practices in STEM education, as well as some of the key findings from an ADB-funded study to map the state of STEM education in 4 developing member countries: Bangladesh, Cambodia, Kyrgyz Republic, and Uzbekistan. The second part of the session introduces the STEAM model of the City of Turku, Finland. STEAM Turku creates a new education operating model for the City of Turku for increasing the attractiveness of science and technology. It builds a science and technology path combining early childhood, basic, and upper secondary level education. The third part, the concluding part, will be a Q&A session. Please post your questions in a chat area at any time. We will try to respond to as many as time allows. If you would like to share your opinion, comments, reflections, please do so in a chat area as well. Let me briefly introduce our excellent speakers before we proceed with the presentations. We have 4 speakers in these sessions. Dr. Ramanathan Subramanyam, who is the international STEM consultant. Dr. Subramaniam was Associate Professor of Science Education at the National Institute of Education in Nanyang Technological University in Singapore until his recent retirement. Prior to this, he was worked at the Singapore Science Center to popularize science and technologies to students and the public. He has published numerous research papers in peer-reviewed international journals. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry UK and a fellow of the Institute of Physics. Mr. John Denny is a senior technical advisor on a wide range of education issues, supporting mainly developing countries throughout Asia and Africa. He's currently supporting the Asian Development Bank and UNESCO on multi-country research toward country situation analysis on education technologies. He has served as a UNICEF staff for 6 years. His current focus is on assisting private sector upstarts and NGOs, and through consultancy work to revision education systems in preparation for the 4th Industrial Revolution, which will see focus on outcomes rather than inputs. Mr. Matti Mäkelä, head of the Project Management Office, City of Turku, Finland. Matti has a lot of experience in leading broad development projects, which have frequently dealt with the themes such as STEAM, youth guarantee, and the development and transfer of innovations. He has also been a speaker in various youth guarantee and innovation transfer seminars in Finland and elsewhere in the EU. Matti is currently the chair of the Union of the Baltic Cities Task Force supporting youth employment and well-being. And our last speaker, Niina Salonen, project coordinator. Niina is a STEAM Turku coordinator, keeping actions and plans tied together from early childhood education to secondary level education. Niina has been working in the project management office for 5 years, dealing with learning management systems, digital learning, and co-design with companies. So let's begin. I invite Dr. Subramaniam and Dr. John Denny to start their presentation. Please, the floor is yours. You have 20 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
I'm trying to share this slide. Are you all able to see the slides?
Yes, we can see your slide.
I'm not able to full screen it. Okay. Okay. Very good day to all of you. Okay, the focus of my presentation is on STEM education. Now I'm going to focus on some best practices in developed countries, as well as the findings from an Asian Development Board study on 4 countries. Now, STEM, I think we all know it stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, this term was introduced in the 1990s. When it was first introduced, you find that it was mainly to refer to the separate science subjects, like, for example, science, mathematics, and so on. But, okay, now science and mathematics are very much school subjects in many schools. Technology and engineering are not yet school subjects. So that is the reason why, even though we call STEM, you find that we're basically referring to science subjects and mathematics subjects. But again, we need to note that technology is very much embedded in school subjects such as design and technology and informatics. And even science teachers, mathematics teachers, they make use of a lot of ICT resources when teaching science and mathematics. So in a way, you find that technology is very much embedded, in the school curriculum. Now, so as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about STEM, we are basically referring to science and mathematics subjects. Integrated STEM, where science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are hybridized, is something a recent development. And now the point is, the real world is interdisciplinary in nature. There's no demarcation into separate disciplines like science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. So that is the reason why integrated STEM is a very recent development and is worthy for students to be immersed in integrated STEM. Now, these are some of the common best practices in developed countries. Now, these are purely from the lens of my own observation and experience. Now, firstly is, of course, teaching of science and mathematics are given pronounced emphasis in schools. Now, this has been the case for quite a long time, but in the developed world, science and mathematics emphasis is very much there. Standard of pre-service teacher education in curriculum study subjects in science and mathematics is also very good. Now, teacher professional development is something which is very much enhanced, but very much emphasized. But this is because science and technology are, increasing rapidly in today's society. Even educational developments, increasing rapidly. So that is the reason why teacher professional development is very important. And when we look at teacher education institutes in STEM education subjects, you find that, the level of research activity levels is pretty high. Now, another thing is, of course, the presence of science centers. Science centers are basically institutions which popularize science and technology to students and the public. And they have strong linkages with schools. At the same time, the pervasiveness of NGO-based scientific academies, scientific societies, and other associations for the promotion of science is very much embedded, in the societal landscape in these countries. Now, even though STEM education is provided by schools, you find there's also a vibrant ecosystem, which also provides some aspects of STEM education which are not covered in school. This is mainly from the private sector. So this is something which is private sector and also, from other institutions. High bandwidth access to internet. Now, with so much of resources on the web, you find that, there's so much of materials and information you could make use of in teaching. So you find that with high bandwidth access to internet, the entire world can be brought into the classroom. So much of resources on the web. Lesson delivery using ICT is very pervasive. And integrated STEM education, is also very pervasive in the developed world. Okay, now ADB funded, a study to map the state of STEM education in 4 countries: Bangladesh, Cambodia, Kyrgyz Republic, and Uzbekistan. And the findings from these studies have really given a very good snapshot of, the state of STEM education in each country. And the purpose of this study is, of course, to see not only map the state of STEM education, but also how we could develop or rather effect improvement further. Now, the method for the study basically is interviews of key stakeholders. and also, the design, development, and administration of 2 surveys. STEM subject teachers survey of STEM education. We got physics teachers, chemistry teachers, mathematics teachers, primary science teachers, and others, to complete a survey. And for each of the countries, we managed to get about 1,000 teachers to complete the survey. Now, school leaders are also very important. Even if the state of STEM education in a school is high, you find that effective school leaders can drive STEM education to the next level. So that is the reason why we also wanted to survey school leaders' views of education in general. Now, the survey of STEM subject teachers, we got findings on 12 sub-skills. Like, for example, these are the skills shown here. Like, for example, syllabus, textbooks, pre-service teacher training program, professional development program in STEM education, project work, and so on. For each of these sub-skills, we have at least 5 statements where teachers can tick on a scale, on a Likert scale, from strongly agree to strongly disagree. Now, the general findings of this, in most of the countries, you find that most of the countries surveyed, we find that the students are less likely to take up careers in STEM. One of the reasons could be that students' interest levels in STEM subjects are not up to the desired levels. That means, in fact, stakeholders feel that more effort needs to be put into exciting students about STEM. Professional development programs are also, not very extensive, and teachers feel that they need more upskilling. Pre-service teacher training program also area for improvement. In quite a number of countries surveyed, the laboratories are not adequate and also not well resourced, for standard practical work. Internet connectivity is slow. And also we find that the perception of the state of STEM education in the school and country is not high. Now, this is from the teachers, about 1,000 teachers. Also, their overall attitude towards STEM education is not high. This is on a scale. Now, we also reached out to school leaders, and we generated findings on 5 sub-skills, which are shown here. And each of these sub-skills has at least 5 statements for school leaders to take on a scale from 1 to 5. And the major findings are this: school leaders, views have to be given extra weightage because they can see, a school-wide picture. They feel that education policies need some improvement. And quite a number of principals feel that, if the quality of teachers in the schools are improved, more could be done. Professional development program for teachers is something which is very much wanted. Also, universities and teacher education institutes, they need to provide more support for schools. Also, their perception of the effectiveness of education in their school and in the country is not high. Also, their overall attitude towards education is not high. This is based on the scale which they ticked. Now, there's so many recommendations which our team have provided, but I'm going to focus on 6 major recommendations. And okay, recommendation number 1, the survey findings show that students' interest levels in science and mathematics is not high. Now, one way to do this, of course, to expose students regularly to enrichment programs. Now, cost may be a factor, but there's quite a lot of activities, using low-cost materials which can be considered. Again, you find that the interest levels of students in science and mathematics can also be correlated, with the lesson delivery. So lessons need to be delivered in an interesting and a well-resourced manner. That means we have to move away from a teacher-centric to a more dynamic approach where we make use of resources like demonstrations, web-based resources, etc., to deliver content. Again, a policy decision on teacher recruitment, upskilling of teacher competencies through PD programs is also important. These are short-term action and medium-term action. Now, more PD courses for teachers is very important, because both teachers of STEM subjects and school leaders have flagged up this as an area which needs more attention. Now, short-term action, a PD program is something, need to be done on a sustained basis, but at the short-term level, you find that quite a number of courses can be conducted. For example, how to teach physics, chemistry, biology, or mathematics innovatively, how to assess student learning more vigorously, how to develop low-cost science and mathematics teaching aids, and so on. More importantly, how to identify misconceptions in science subjects. Because you find that misconceptions create discontinuities in the knowledge structure of students. So if these are not addressed through conceptual change interventions, then students' understanding of a subject may not be holistic. Long-term action, again, the education authorities need to ensure that every teacher attends at least X hours of training annually. The value of X is very much dependent on, on resources and so on. At the same time, teacher education institutes need to enhance the range and quality of their programs. So this is something, a point food for thought in the long term. Okay, third recommendation is improve pre-service teacher education. Now, we have received feedback that the training programs that teachers have attended, need some improvement. One way is, of course, the content in the curriculum studies courses need to be enhanced, but this must be informed by recent research developments. Also, assessment needs to be more robust. In the medium term, we can't really leave it to the long term. This is something which needs quite urgent attention. So in the medium term, very important to do a needs analysis and see how to revise the curriculum courses in physics, chemistry, mathematics, subjects, for teacher training. And we need, at the same time, revising the curriculums is one thing, but the enactment in the classroom is another thing. Often there's a chasm between the intended curriculum and the enacted curriculum. So this is something, which we need to keep in mind. Again, I would say we need more PhDs in STEM subjects education among teacher educators in all the 4 countries. Now, another thing we found is teachers are not clear on how to conduct integrated STEM activities. I think the perception is, we need very sophisticated apparatus. This is not true. Quite a lot of integrated STEM activities can be done using low-cost materials and other resources. And school teachers need training on this. Now, assessment, also important. The survey shows that in most of the DMCs, assessment of learning in STEM subjects during exams need to be more rigorous. So one way in the short term is, of course, to enhance the difficulty level of the question. This is something which can be readily done. So this will give a more robust appraisal of student understanding. At the same time, teachers also need more training on how to set thinking questions, especially those which are pitched at the higher levels of the revised Bloom's taxonomy. As far as long-term action is concerned, policy change by the education authorities is very important if students' learning are to be more rigorously assessed during exams. And our last recommendation, at least for this presentation, is there are no science centers in all the 4 developing member countries. Actually, there is a misconception that to set up a science center, we need a lot of money and so on. This is not true. If the state can provide land and premises for free, and we just need a core team of scientific, technical, and management staff, actually a small center can be set up very fast, in the capital city. As far as fabrication of exhibits are concerned, quite a lot of exhibits, I would say more than 100 exhibits can be fabricated using some workshop facilities in tertiary and technical institutes. Now, there are cookbooks available for the fabrication of exhibits. These have been very generously produced by the Exploratorium, which is regarded as the first science center in the world, located in San Francisco. And By making use of facilities in tertiary institutions, we're basically unlocking spare capacity, residual capacity, and science enrichment programs on STEM subjects. There's so much which other science centers have shared on the web, So the reference can be made to these programs, and a team of science teachers or science educators can easily come up with quite a number of science enrichment programs for offering to schools. A long-term action is a science center in every major city in each developing member country. Now, as I said, many people think that setting up a science center is very expensive. Not true. It can be done using local expertise and other resources. Okay, now in summary, I would say that the 4 developing member countries are well positioned to ramp up STEM subjects education. School leaders, STEM subjects, and policymakers, they recognize the need for the country to be strong in STEM education, and this is something very gratifying to note. And the value add from this study will come only when the areas identified for improvement in this study are addressed, and and some action is taken. But more importantly, it is first necessary to enhance science and mathematics instruction, learning and assessment in schools. STEM education in the country, cannot just be the responsibility of schools. Teachers have enough work to keep them busy. It is not fair to overload them with more responsibilities, like coming up with, a STEM subject as such. We need other stakeholders to come on board or be incentivized to come in. And as far as integrated STEM education is concerned, it's best promoted through informal science education, either by schools or by institutions, which are focused on science popularization, like science centers. And with that, thank you for listening. Thank you. Oh, okay. Now I'll pass on the slides to Dr. Tim.
John. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Subra, for a wonderful presentation. Am I visible? Okay. Thank you. In Subra's presentation, I think he brought out a few really important points, and some of his recommendations I wanted to point out. One, he talked about low student interest in studying STEM. And I found that, recognize that I come from a STEM background. Actually, I'm a geologist. And what I want to point out is that we really need a cultural change in the way that we perceive schooling and the way that we deliver schooling. So I want to talk to you today just briefly to complement what Subra talked about, is about competency-based education. And so here, I just want to give you a few slides to piggyback on what Subra was talking about on competency-based education. So here are 5 standards of what competency-based education are. The first one is that the competencies that you derive must be carefully identified. And what is a competency? It's just a statement of a standard with an indicator, so that our learning objectives are outcome-based and not input-based. This answers Subra's recommendation. Why are students not excited about STEM? Often they don't know where they're going. Please go back. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they don't know where they're going. So they're not excited about STEM because they don't understand what the outcome could or should be. So we need to provide clear competencies with standards and indicators so that the students can know the learning pathway. The number 2 thing, Subra was talking about assessment. And the next point of competency-based education is that we need clear assessment which is defined in advance. So the criteria for assessment, how we will assess students in physics, in chemistry, in mathematics, should be defined in advance. explicitly stated and put forth in advance. So that's standard number 2. Standard number 3, the instructional program under a competency-based system should provide for individual development. The problem with current schooling is that it's based on a factory mentality where all students go through the program at the same pace with the same rigor. And this is why students are failing at STEM, because they attempt science in different modalities within multiple intelligences at different speeds. So the third one is that we need instructional programs that provide for individual development. Next is the assessment of the competency, what I was talking about in number 1, should be based on the participant's knowledge. It should be performance-based, and it should actually measure the capability or the performance of the student. So now we have 4 standards for competency. The fifth one, the 5th standard for competency is that participants or the students, the participants of a program, a STEM program, should progress through the instructional program at their own rate. And one of the reasons that students are so turned off of science is that it rapidly goes through the process and they miss the most important aspects and they can't get caught up. And when they can't get caught up and they fall behind and they become discouraged. So what I'm putting forth is that in order to change and move forward to Subra's recommendations, we really should be looking at a competency-based training system for STEM. Next slide, please. So as we imagine this change to a competency-based education system, it's going to require a few very crucial changes, cultural changes to the way that we deliver education. And the first is going to be, it requires revisioning or reimagining of education systems to focus on the outcomes and not the inputs. The next, it must be move from content-driven to skills-driven, meaning that it's not about the content, but it's about what you learn and how you can perform on that particular item of learning. The next, we need to move away from a credit or a time-based system and more towards performance or performance demonstration, where we focus on practice and mastery. The next, the 4th one, we need to move away from lessons and more towards experiences, where STEM embodies 21st century skills, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, information technology. And this is where we talk about integrative STEM, as Subra has talked about before, bringing together all of the different fields of STEM in a cohesive and holistic embodiment where we're talking about experiences. And the 5th one is we need to stop the way that we're providing assessments. It's not about grades, but it's about mastery. So we need performance-based demonstration or mastery of STEM subjects. Next slide, please. And that'll be my final slide. So here's what I hope. Here's what I hope. And we're talking about STEM and ed tech and bringing these all together. I really believe that we need a school system that's focused on learning by doing, that embodies the principles of STEM, chemistry, mathematics, and the such. And the next, we need school systems that bring problems, real world problems, to challenge students to be relevant to the world outside of just learning chemistry, mathematics, and physics. And next, we need to focus on performance, not just grading, not just assessment, not just becoming a valedictorian, but we need mastery and performance as our grading system, as the way to assess students in a progression. And the last, we need personalization. We need personalization to encourage the students to be empowered with science, with mathematics, with geology, with geography, with with chemistry and all of the such. They need to become empowered to understand the learning from an individual perspective and how that relates to the world around them. So I take what Subra has told us about his research study in 4 countries, and I think his recommendations were just spot on, and this is how we can bring it together and move forward. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you appreciate my suggestions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Subra. Thank you, team, for an excellent work and excellent presentation. I think this kind of assessments and surveys will help the education policymakers to come up with comprehensive policy packages on how to promote and encourage STEM education with sufficient financial support. You've done this assessment in 4 countries, and I just wonder which country or countries are ahead or progressing in terms of STEM education, and what are the key factors for their success? Maybe if time allows, you can respond, to this question and provide more information in a Q&A session. And now let's move to the second presentation. Matti and Niina, please, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, introduction first, if you start, Niina.
Yeah, just a second. I'm trying to. I hope you can see the presentation now. Okay, so thank you. Yeah, thank you for inviting us. It's an honor to be here presenting the STEAM Turku model of our city. My name is Niina Salonen, and as previously introduced, I work as the project coordinator for the STEAM Turku model. And Matti?
And I work as head of the project management office in the City of Turku, and we take care of our education and other projects which are funded by from outside, like for example European Union or national funding institutions, Ministry of Education, National Board of Education, etc. And let's get ahead. So good practices from STEAM Turku. So STEAM Turku is our science and technology path in early childhood education, starting from the year maybe not 0, but 3-4 years old toddlers, and then to preschool, comprehensive education, and secondary level, which means upper secondary schools and vocational education. And of course, our main location is City of Turku, but it's also we work close together with other municipalities in southwest Finland. And we go to our aims and goals more directly a little bit later, but in the previous presentations there was talk about STEM, but in some countries we talk about STEAM, like in Finland. So STEAM comes science, technology, engineering, math, but also arts. And of course, we talk about this quite a lot, but we thought that we wanted to have here that with science and technology, you can also be very creative and combine their arts and of course, if you look at the history, arts and science and arts and technology have been very much combined. For example, Pablo Picasso was very interested in Einstein's theory of relativity, and some say that Cubism would have never been existing without the Einstein's theories. And also, if you look at quantum physics, and then word quark comes from the James Joyce's notoriously difficult novel Finnegan's Wake. So let's go ahead. A few words about our hometown. City of Turku is the 3rd biggest urban area in Finland, around 7th or 8th in Nordic countries. Populations in the city is a little under 200,000, and with the surroundings 350,000, and Turku is the center of southwest Finland, where the population is around 700,000. So if we compare this to big cities in Asia, it's a quite small place, but in Nordic countries, it's quite a big city, and especially in Finland, it's one of the big 3 with Helsinki and Tampere. Our major industries are biotechnology, ICT, maritime, and creative industries. And let's go ahead. And here's some information about Turku Education Division, daycare centers. But, well, two numbers, including daycare, we have over 40,000 students and staff members, around 3,700. Of course, most of them teachers, but of course there's planners and guidance personnel, etc., etc. And Finnish education system, I and Niina also, we could talk quite long about this, but now we have a very limited time. So a few things I think it's important to know that everybody goes through the basic education, which is 9 years. And nowadays, you can pretty much say that everybody is doing also a preschool or pre-primary education. And after basic education, you have basically two options: vocational education or upper secondary schools. And starting this fall, you have to continue your studies after basic education. Before that, it was voluntarily to what you wanted. Of course, for years now, most of youngsters have continued their studies after basic education or comprehensive schools. And what is also important that there is no dead ends, and no matter if you choose a vocational route or you choose the upper secondary school, you have a right to apply to higher education, either to universities or to University of Applied Sciences. And all education is free in Finland, all the way to the university level until the point you have your master's degree. And there are four organizations of four institutions of higher education in Turku, 2 universities and 2 University of Applied Sciences, and they form a so-called technology campus. Of course, they have a medicine, history, all kind of subjects there, but they all also have their own divisions of technology and science. So they form a technology campus, and in STEAM Turku, we want to be part of the City of Turku's cooperation with Technology Campus and, for example, help them have students and have a cooperational programs to, for example, secondary level education. And we have permanent financing for STEAM Turku from the city, but also then we apply for more funding from the EU. And like I said, usual suspects, which are the National Board of Education and the Ministry of Education. City of Turku's funding is about 1/3 of our annual STEAM funding, which is total is about 1.2, 1.3 million euros. And here you can see, like I already said, this is a science and technology path from early childhood education through basic education to secondary level. And the idea is that in preschools and early childhood education and basic education, we kind of, our slogan, ignite the spark, and in secondary level, it's maintain the flame. So in early childhood and basic education, we want to get youngsters interested in science, technology, and math, and then when they get to secondary level, we get more to details, and also offer them a direct route to the higher education. And here are our main goals. So increase the appeal of science technology, create this science and technology path, create new digital solutions, contents, learning materials and learning environments, new paths to higher education, create new forms of cooperation with between all levels of education, university, and of course companies, enterprises. And also, as you can see this slide, that we want to have a very close cooperation in our region and also in national level and international level. And this is kind of a little bit updated, this number of projects, but it's around 15, 20 projects and under the STEAM umbrella all the time. So I don't go to the details about what's going on, but you can see that we have projects in basic education, preschool, secondary level, and some projects that are combining all the levels of education.
Yeah, I'm just adding from here that there is the same information in a bit different ways, just showing here that from the previous slide, you could see how it's divided, and here you can see the whole path. Just Matti, yeah. Please go on.
Yeah, this is how, what kind of different kind of options are, because we update this picture every now and then, but there are opportunities you have in early childhood education, what you have in basic education, and what you have in the secondary level. And in our philosophy, I think there are three main things: participation, openness, and innovativeness. So we believe that there's a personal path for every pupil, student, and teacher into the world of science and technology. So we don't think that this is only for very talented or those who are very interested in, but everybody. And there are different things that you can do there. And openness, we want to share all information we get, all the best practices, and also we are ready to learn from the others, and want to seek new solutions, opportunities. And we also want to believe that when we do something stupid, it's a good thing because we learn from that. And some results from the past 2 years: over 15,000 participants, and for example, over 1,000 participants higher education opportunities tour, which we did together with Technology Campus, new models to increase the attractiveness of secondary level education, in secondary level vocational education, new operating models, new direct routes to university studies. A lot of results, but I think that Niina will go a little more to details about our best practices in her part, so we can get ahead. And cooperation with enterprises, of course, that's very natural in the vocational education, but also in upper secondary schools, they do the projects to the enterprises, and different kind of innovative experience. For example, we just started round 2 in Beyond 2030 Challenge with the Bayer enterprise, and it's a science competition for the secondary level students in Finland. And new pedagogical solutions. If you come to Turku, we can show you our AR environment by the banks of the Oura River in the center of Turku, where we can see all kind of people from the history of Turku, including the most notorious serial killer in history of Finland. But since he actually died over 100 years ago, it's very safe nowadays. And I already talk about different forms of cooperation and in local, national, and international level. But I think we are quite close to the end of my part. Yeah. So I think it's your time to maintain the flame. Please,
yeah,
Niina.
Thank you, Matti. So once again, this path of ours, like Matti said, we are trying to or aiming to ignite the spark and maintain the flame. And I'm going to show you or tell you more about the few best practices that we have started here in Turku. I've really enjoyed the previous presentations here, since it also proves to us that we are doing the right things. And I hope that we can offer you some ideas what to do in your area. I'm going to go through our best practices through the educational sectors. And like Matti said, maybe not 0-year-olds, but very, very young kids we've had involved in the STEAM Turku practices. 2 of the main things that we are doing in early childhood education and care is a science bag pilot. We have purchased a few science bags to our project, and we have an educated early childhood teacher who travels with the bag to kindergartens and gives an example lesson of what to do with the science bag. And then the bag is left to the kindergarten so that they can use it freely for 1 week. And then the bag is again collected and the teacher goes to a new place. And we are aiming to have quite affordable things. You can see there's watercolors, microscopes, magnifiers, pH paper, all sorts of stuff that even the youngest kids can use. And with igniting the spark, we mean that when they see our logo or they see stuff that has to do with science, they will know that exciting things will follow. And we hope that that will carry on to their future. We've trained a few science educators for early childhood education, but hope to have more of them. But we are putting emphasis on the igniting the spark stage. In our basic school system, grades 1 to 9, covering ages from 7 to 15, the guiding principle is that STEAM is for everyone, regardless of age and teachers' interests. And that's one of the things that we also try to emphasize, that every student needs to be offered STEAM. They are entitled to the experiences and the ignition, even the teacher, if the teacher is not interested. And here are a few examples of what we've done. Cooperation with companies, like Matti said, is very important. And in our region, the universities have been very interested and active in our model. So from this autumn season onwards, all the 5th graders, it means the 12-year-olds, will visit our local University of Applied Sciences for a junior university visit. And this year it means that 1,600 pupils will go with their teachers to the university. And if we had more time, I would show you a video of what they are doing there, but they are getting a wide spectrum of what can be done at the university level. They are learning microbiology, music technology, social and healthcare, all sorts of stuff. And it has been, this is one of the examples where we've created a win-win cooperation with the university, since the students who guide our pupils will get credits for their studies from doing this. In upper secondary schools, we have a few specialized high schools, STEAM specialized. We have natural science and marine track and an ICT high school. But also all of our upper secondary students have possibility to choose STEAM courses to their studies. There are a few, I've translated only a few of these, but for example, traffic and marine physics, a course called AI, Human and Environment, and also design courses. Like Matti said, including arts has been a very big deal for us. And then in our vocational education and training, of course, most of the things that we do in vocational education are already STEAM by nature. But we are putting emphasis on the job learning and doing projects for companies, and thus strengthening the connection between the working life and studies. And also, like Matti introduced, the Beyond 2030 challenge. It is open for all students from vocational education and training and upper secondary students. So we're trying to empower all students to take part on this. I believe that's most of the things that we had here today. And since we are on schedule, I think we have time for questions. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you, Matti. Thanks a lot, Niina, for your very impressive work and this wonderful presentation. I'm really excited to know that you have a holistic approach in applying STEAM in all education levels, including pre-primary level, which is very important in a sense that it provides foundations for children's learning, further learning and education. So I'm very curious about how your project was perceived or is being perceived by parents, especially for the kindergarten children. Have you conducted any training or consultations with parents to increase their awareness and knowledge about STEAM so that they support their child development in the same manner at home? Because we all know that the family is the primary socialization agent at that age, and the role of the family is extremely important. So maybe with this question, we smoothly move to our last session, which is a Q&A session, and let us now open the floor for the questions. I noticed that Tim has already responded to the questions in the chat box, to the most questions in the chat box. So maybe we will start from my question to Matti and Niina, and then we'll continue. I'll read the questions from the chat box. Thank you.
Mostly, well, yeah, well, the information we have got from the parents, and we haven't done any study how they feel about that, but all the feedback has been very positive so far, and they've been very interested. But that's a good question. Maybe we could ask something what the parents would like to have there, but they have been very interested and really positive feedback. And just one anecdote, I had a meeting with the city mayor, and then her child was in this junior AMK plan, and she told me that her kid now wants to be a scientist, so it's working very well.
Yeah, I would like to add that all in all, I would say that most families have a quite high trust on our education system, and since the stuff that we are doing in the early childhood education it's mostly, you know, questions like why do boats float? I would say that the kids don't necessarily understand that they are dealing with STEAM, and sometimes it would be, well, I wouldn't say unnecessary, but it would be too much information for the parents. They just want to know that their kids are learning, and that's what we are doing.
Yeah, and also, of course, preschool and schools, they communicate with the parents very, very much. And so, for example, when there was this junior University of Applied Sciences, of course, information went to parents that now we start this and why we do this. And
yeah, but they are, of course, STEAM logos in the weekly schedules of the kindergartens, so that even the parents can tell the kids that now you have the logo day again.
Okay, thank you very much, Niina. Thank you very much, Matti. Now let's see what questions we have in our chat box. But I see that Tim has responded almost to all of them. So, Dr. Subra, Tim, do you want to provide more comments or elaborate more on those questions?
Okay. Okay. First, now I want to say that it was really a very enriching experience listening to your presentations. Now, I want to just take on, address the question by Maxwell, whether there are any real life examples which could be practiced in the classroom. We have done quite a number of studies in Singapore on this. Now, one example which I could share is, for example, integrated STEM. The key challenge, of course, to see how to present it using simple materials. And at the same time, you find that students need a certain level of conceptual maturity in the sciences before they can do this. Okay, recently we set a challenge to some school students. They're given, two full spread newspapers, 4 rubber bands, 2 meters of Scotch tape, a styrofoam cup, 3/4 full of water. And the challenge is, of course, for them to build a structure which can balance a styrofoam cup when it's placed at a height of about 15 centimeters. And the thing is, firstly, they need to come up with a design. So in other words, the design and build process is really part of engineering. At the same time, they need to take on board quite a number of concepts, like, for example, center of gravity, elasticity, and so on. Now, anything to do with structure, we could say, is technology. And of course, mathematics is still involved because you find that they need to measure heights, measure length. And the thing we find is that, when students embark on this, they work in a group. So that means when students work on this as a group, you find they can engage in science communication practices. So when they engage in science communication practices, you find that the epistemic, underpinnings of science, very much comes on board. So when students negotiate understanding, when they interact with each other, negotiate understanding, they can come to a consensus on how to approach the problem. And, we got groups of students to work on this project. And when we look at the designs and also the final models built up, it has been a very learning experience for us, because you find that, the kind of creativity which you can see, in problem solving, the kind of how they're able to harness, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in coming up with with a structure. But these are learning experiences. Of course, we could scale it up, and we also did a study, using, like, for example, quite recently, we got a group of academically high ability students. We gave them a challenge to come up with an exhibit on laminar flow, which can be, which can be put up for display. But this was done over a semester, and the kind of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics which goes into this structure has been a real learning experience for them. So in other words, there are ways and means in which, quite a lot of stuff, for example, 21st century skills can be incorporated in the classroom. In the case for developing countries, you find that cost is a factor which we need to take into consideration. Like, rich countries, you find they can go for more sophisticated, STEM education activities. But for developing member countries, we also need to be realistic. There's quite a number of low-cost approaches where, such, 21st century skills like collaboration, creative thinking, and so on, can be promoted among students. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Subram. Team, would you like to add or to comment on what you've already provided in the chat box?
Yeah, delighted to. Going back again to what Maxwell said, are there any real examples of problem-based learning in the schools? And I find as I examine schools around the world that they're picking up on competency-based education, and they're realizing that problem-based learning and performance-based assessment combined together is producing students who are more capable of entering the workforce. So the problem is, when we talk about schools in the current curriculum, is that companies and businesses are telling us that students are not prepared to move into the workforce. And so this is the hope of competency-based education, the hope of switching and revisioning and reimagining how and what we do. As Turku had talked about, collaborating with industry to put students into the industry to get world examples. So I thank Maxwell very much for his question about problem-based learning. So it happens not only in the school, but also the combination of bringing industry into the school and students out to the industry to solve real-world problems. It's an excellent question, and it's a core of competency-based education. as I look at some of the other questions, Naron talked about personalized learning. And yes, personalized learning talks about the capability of the student to learn what is appropriate to them or what is needed for them, what is relevant to them. Now, the problem that I often pose is that I think that what the pandemic has done to us as a society around the world, I think that it has brought the realization that micro learning, little bits and pieces of learning, becomes quite useful. And that's personalized learning. That human beings learn in short modules. They don't learn in semesters, in years, as much as we learn little bits and pieces. So personalized learning is a reintroduction of what we do and how we learn in little bits and pieces. And it's called micro-credentialing, or learning what you need to learn based upon what is relevant to your life. So yes, Naron said it's incredibly difficult to bring that in to schooling. The way that schooling is organized with current curriculums, personalized learning is incredibly difficult. This is why I'm calling for competency-based education, a revision of how we produce curriculums, of how we envision schooling, like the Turku example has explained in their city. So it's a revision or a rescoping of what we do to be based upon outcome and not inputs, which would then focus on personalized learning. So I think those were some of the really good questions about problem-based learning, about personalized learning. And Turku presented a wonderful example of how they're focused on those two big issues. Thank you.
I would like to comment on the curricula that John was just talking about, that we have now on national level moved from grade specific requirements in competencies and moved more towards now I don't know, I lost the words, that you have specific learning goals for different levels of school, that you, for example, have that you have to learn certain things during the first 6 years, but it's not specified that when during the 6 years. And we're moving more towards personalized learning, but it's a slow process.
Okay, thank you, Niina. I think next question is also for you and Matti. What would be the challenges to implement what you've achieved in Turku nationwide? And I think there's another question from Naron. It seems that having a good comprehensive STEAM policy is of great importance, but the concern is that implementation of this policy is a big challenge. So let's speak about the challenges. What would be the challenges to implement what you've been already doing in Turku nationwide? Thank you.
If we talk about during this national-wide, of course, many things happen, and I think, for example, dissemination of our best practices, it's in many cases easy, but of course there's a question of if, for example, in different cities, if they have funding on their own or if they have a funding from EU or some other source. But I think that what is bit more difficult is that our kind of overall approach that we have combined early childhood education, basic education, and secondary level. We have very good examples from other cities in Finland, but they have a lot of STEAM work, for example, in basic education, but they don't combine their for example, upper secondary schools or vice versa. So that's, I think that's kind of a change in attitude that put everybody together. So that's what's kind of a joyful message that we have tried to spread in Finland. And of course, there are big differences. It's easier to have STEAM in your curriculum in big cities than it is in, like, for example, remote rural areas in eastern or northern Finland. And then in implementation, I think it's both in national and local level. The question is how to make the decision makers and those who decide about budgets to get involved in here. And in Turku, it works very well because everybody sees that what's the importance of this and what's the importance of technology and technology campus to our enterprises and our industry and how we get the tax money, etc., etc. So, Niina, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I would like to add that I don't necessarily see this as a challenge. It has to do with teacher training and training those who are already on the job. But we would need to encourage teachers to see that STEAM is not all that difficult, that they are actually doing STEAM and they know STEAM. And well, if it's a challenge, it is a minor one, that it's like Matti said, just a change in mind shift, just a shift in mind that you just turn your head a bit and see that we're already doing it.
And we have some experiences, for example, teachers who are kind of older than me and think that how things were done in 1970s is a good way to do still things. But now they have learned, okay, this AR or virtual reality environments are really good to support their, for example, their history or some other ways of teaching. So it's going there. And like I said earlier, that there is a route to everybody, to the world of science and technology. And we try to encourage everybody and try to listen to what they want and what they are afraid of course, also.
Thank you very much, Matti. Thanks a lot, Niina. I think we're over time already, and it's time to conclude our session. But there's one more question from Armenia. And since I'm also in Armenia, I think I will read this question and we'll ask our speakers to respond to it. STEM education has become STEM education, which is a brilliant approach. Dear panelists, would you please share your opinion? To which directions there is a need to expand STEM to? Do you see additional areas requirements to engage in it? So maybe Dr. Subra and team can respond to this question, and also Niina and Matti, if you want to complement, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. My personal view is this: both STEM and STEAM are important. But again, you find that STEM is very much concerned with students who are good in science and mathematics. But you find that increasingly we need to also get on board those who are good in art. So that means you find that if we can focus on STEAM projects, that means you find that there's a merging of more disciplines, and people with an artistic background can also bring in fresh insights, to even science problems, especially when we work on integrated STEM projects, which involve design and build. I mean, we have been focusing on STEM, but I would say, STEAM is also a way to go about it, because, when art comes into the picture, I think that we could see even more creativity.
Anybody wants to provide comments or elaborate more on that?
Yeah, just one example from the this how to get together all kind of actors and also arts and science technology is like I previously mentioned, our AR environment by the riverbanks of Oula River in Turku, and how we created that. There were enterprises, they were trying their new technology, and how they create that. There were students who were learning from in project with enterprises. There were those who were learning science and technology in upper secondary level and also in the university level. There were also those who were writing stories and creating the figures for the AR environment. So you need art, science, and everybody needed to understand the meaning of everything and the importance of these different actors. So it's also connecting people, like this old Finnish company once said. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the time was really limited. 1 hour is not sufficient to discuss, this topic. Thank you all for being part of this interesting session. Thank you very much to our speakers for their excellent presentations and insight about STEM and STEAM education, good practices and perspectives. Thanks also to our wonderful audience for posting such an interesting question. So promoting STEM education is one of the key factors in social and economic development of any country, but it's critical for developing countries, particularly because people engaged in STEM education can change the world, the society in many ways by creating more job opportunities, fighting poverty, fighting inequalities. Therefore, as Dr. Subra and team has mentioned in their presentation, education institutions should encourage not the subject-related specific knowledge, but competency-based skills, 21st century skills. It's also important to shift from formal assessment method to feedback-based performance, and which is also more important to apply innovative teaching and learning methods to attract students' attention and also improve their learning outcomes in STEM education. And we also learned from Niina's and Matt's presentation that it's very important to start from early childhood education by creating STEM learning environment for kids and show them that the technology or all these attractive devices are not only for playing, but also for creating, designing, and developing. So taking this opportunity, I would like to inform you that there will be another international conference on developing students' core competencies and reducing rural-urban disparities in primary education through use of ICT in Gansu province of China in September. That conference also will be supported by ADB. For more information, please refer to ADB-related resources on the International Skills Forum website, or just contact me for further information. Well, the International Skills Forum is still ongoing, and I wish you all the best. And I hope that you will get a lot of useful and new information for your job, for your career. See you in the next sessions. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.